Welcome to Post-Traumatic Thriving, where we explore life's toughest issues along with the art, science, and stories of resilience. Please be advised that our guests share their raw stories of addiction, abuse, crime, and tragedy, along with tips to survive and thrive. And now, here is our host, Dr. Randall Bell.
Welcome back to Post-Traumatic Thriving. I am here with Nadia Davis, the author of this book coming out, Home is Within You. Just a crazy, interesting story. To quickly recap, there's the growing up in Southern California, Nadia's dad was a farm worker, attorney, activist, nationally famous, inspired Nadia to go to UCLA, go to law school, all kinds of great accomplishments, but childhood trauma, which sadly we see too much of, and then trauma in college with a sexual assault. I mean, this is just ugly stuff. You just got to watch the episodes. And then, manipulation and, how would you say, even extortion by somebody posing to be there to help, drugs, alcohol, but there's a great end to this story. So let's get into it. We're in the thrive stage, as you know, Nadia, and, sounds to me like the last 7 years have been full of a lot of good things, a lot of healing. So what did that look like for you?
7 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Maybe longer began the journey. And what I love about this is how it helps me today as a mother. And so way back at the beginning of that journey, I had to return to the core innocence. I can see that core innocence in my children still, preserved in the best way it can today. Mm-hmm. Yet back then, I had to just say, like how we began in the first interview, like, come out wherever you are. Come on, little Nadia, you've been hiding away and underneath all these survival mechanisms and where are you? Yet somewhere deep down, she has always been there. And the near-death experience I had, like presented the proof that core innocence is like always remains and is there in what I saw. And in the beginnings, it was a lot of 12-step work and a lot of accountability on the outside. The journey to the healing really began when I started understanding how what we call character defects were really helping me survive. I entered a couple different treatment centers for trauma recovery. One of them is Dee's House that I do talk about in the book. And my therapist then, who is my therapist today, who I adore, introduced me to some of the Course in Miracles studies that had an angle to it that helped me to understand the concept, I am not a body nor my thoughts. Just kind of like some of the 12-step, the defect word didn't quite fit, kind of the God stuff in A Course in Miracles was, yet we are talking about experimentation in this thrive stage. Mm-hmm. You may get people out there in recovery may get little dabbles. Don't turn your backs on it because there's pieces in so many different modalities of healing and so many different learnings that will come along your path. Hold on to those little pieces that increase that awareness. After I began the therapy with Miriam and had a little bit of a regimen with my AA recovery, as well as reading some of the Course in Miracles, I still was having some present life trauma-related triggers. And I had an alcohol relapse after like 3 years, and then there'd be another couple of years, and there was never kind of long episodes. It was like a 24-hour period, and I'm going to stop, and now I'm reaching out to my therapist. So another thing I want to point out to people is if you have a sobriety relapse and you're on a trauma healing journey, don't beat yourself up for it. There is a core wound in there that is dying to be heard, that caused us to reach out to numb it with something or someone, and go and say, okay, like what was really going on? So I want to point that other thing out, is that there were a couple of relapses. There was AA work, some of the Course in Miracles. I'm beginning to talk to a fellowship. I'm beginning to talk weekly to a therapist. I began also at the same time practicing kundalini yoga. And kundalini sounds like a roller coaster, I say. It was truly the way that I truly began to feel safe in my body. All of the injuries from the car accident, and then all of the psychological kind of flashback stuff, the last place I felt safe in was kind of sitting down calmly in my body. And so kundalini was powerful enough with mantra and sound as like this bridge to get me to sit down and breathe deeply. A lot of people struggle with meditation and yoga, and a lot of people will hear it for, kind of like the modern kind of cool way of recovery now. Like, oh yeah, I should try meditation. I should try, yoga. And we tend to believe it's, I don't know, we just beat ourselves up. We don't do it right. We can't quiet our mind enough. And so I did that. But what I found with Kundalini yoga was the mantras helped with like my overanalytical criticizing brain. Mantra replaced whatever thought I had in my head. And the gong and sounds and the bowls replaced that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say there was a year where I was going to classes. I took a level 1 teacher training course that wasn't just the physical breath work and mantra education. It was the Eastern teachings of how the mind works. That combined with step work, the therapy, and the calming in my body with the breath work,
Mm-hmm.
I slowly began connecting again to what I call a home within me and my core innocence that all of us have. All of us are born from and in a core innocence that holds this like infinite self that is whole, perfect, and complete. And I know that to be true from my experience, from what I saw. It's the spirit of, your child at first, their spirit when they first came into the cells that made the little embryo or zygote and that caused those little sparks and the cell turnings in the body. Like, what causes that? I mean, we come from that. There's no fear and judgment.
Yeah.
In that space. So I started learning how, our minds are naturally in a conflict. It exists in a polarity. And what we don't learn as children is that working of the mind. And that's why some of the stuff you wrote in the book, I think, could be so powerful if it was taught in schools. Our mind creates this conflict. And as the more and more I was introduced to this, I started seeing, okay, most of us are operating on fear and judgment. We're not choosing love. what I know from meditation, from this near-death experience, and from this mantra, it's a certain mantra that explains the beginning of all creation. There's no God word. There's no, religious word. It's just from everything and nothing. There was movement. Something was created. Everything was created. Part of it is you, without fear, without judgment. It's like 6 words that explain what my oldest son is studying as astrophysics and the first spark in science, or God, or whatever it might be. It's like the most simplest way of explaining the beginning of it all. Well, that's what we came from. There's no fear and judgment there. And so it's just the more that I was connecting to that calm in my body, the more I could see, wow, okay, my mind is in the survivalist mode. It has been for years. Am I going to choose? Am I going to be aware of this fear and judgment-based thought, or love? So fears are like all of our thoughts. It's like fears and loss of purpose, loss of identity, loss of the job, loss of love. There's so much fear of so much that the more and more I became aware of that, it wasn't just safety in my body through breath work. It became beating the shame that in the past had interfered with my awareness of that fear and judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. What's come up?
I was choosing the love and not letting my mind get so deep in it that the shame was just like, blocking me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Complete. And what I've noticed is that your healing, your recovery has 2 main components. And that I call the dynamic duo in my book. And one is grounding. We use the term grounding. The first time I ever meditated, if you want to use that word, it was holding hands with 2 convicted murderers in San Quentin prison who taught me the whether you call it the breath work or yoga or meditation. It doesn't matter. It's semantics. But the deep breathing and the science behind it is so resolute that out of Harvard Medical School with Sarah Lazar, she's written a number of articles that have been published in medical journals and all over the place. That deep breathing, what it does, so people know, is it resets the amygdala. It takes the memories out of the inner instinctual brain, puts them through the midbrain, the emotional brain, and to the outer logical brain. Beautiful. It really works. They actually can measure the growth in the brain from this exercise. And you mentioned deep breathing, and there's no right or wrong. If you take 7 breaths in an elevator, that helps.
Yes.
If you do it for half an hour in the morning and night, that's my cardiologist always telling me, and she's right. But sometimes I don't have 30 minutes in the morning and at night to do it. But if you do something, that's the important thing. And a lot of people get baffled they get hung up in the simplicity of it. They say, oh, that's too simple. That's not going to work.
Mind beats.
It really works.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I keep bringing it up, is that you had this childhood trauma, went unresolved for decades. Finally, about 7, 8, 9 years ago, pick the year, I don't know, you started sharing that with a trusted person. And that's those 2. There's other things you can do that I lay out in the book, and I'm sure they're in your book. There's other things you can do, but those dynamic dual are really the starting place. That's why I put them right in chapter 1 of the book.
Yeah.
Because I've seen innumerable people process horrific, world-class trauma, and they do it with just those 2. And you can even do better than that. But the science is getting so good that if people just know that skill set, and it's pretty simple, you're gonna see real trauma recovery. So what else? What else?
Randall, it is so powerful what you're teaching the world. I mean, it is so powerful. And it was that one core childhood trauma. And had I had, and what I can provide my kids today, but had I had that one safe place, safe is a strong word, but it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
Just that one place where, what's going on? I'm right here. Let me hold you. Give it all to me. Just those simple moments for as a parent, or even, I mean, there's so many different opportunities for our kids, from, so many peer to peer, the Cub Scout to the child. There's so many different opportunities where we can see a child going through something where a simple, brief moment of, you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Makes all the difference in the world. And if there is something traumatic like that happening or that has happened, they'll at least be seen in that snippet of time, and it may make the difference. So what occurred with Miriam and the therapy and AA, so it definitely was the grounding in the Kundalini yoga. And as you pointed, the fireside, the connection with a fellowship and with my Kundalini yoga community. I began to break that box that childhood trauma had created. It began to be less of me versus the darkness, and I would say it was about 2 years into practicing Kundalini yoga where I had a meditation experience where I had begun addressing the chronic pain. I had begun processing some of the stuff that happened to me. I had not done the EMDR, but I had shared at least verbally what had happened. I hadn't gone back to relive it and create a better ending. Breath work, the therapy, the human connection. Through that, I began being able to observe my mind and get to a spot where I had a meditation, deep connection to what I had experienced during the car accident, where it was more of my father's spirit, where it was like, it was very spiritual. It was almost like, there was ancestors or people that I didn't recognize just kind of saying like, it's okay. You've been carrying all of our load. There's unaddressed things. It's not your fault. It kind of was the past, present, future thing. I know that this may sound all weird and bizarre.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But it was a meditative experience that was maybe a third of the way, or not even that, a quarter of the way to the near-death experience, but where my mind was trying to make sense of time. And somewhere in that, I felt a level of forgiveness, of self-forgiveness. And that led, I believe, to a bridge to that core innocence, and to be able to even have the guts to begin some EMDR and more intense trauma therapy to say, okay, she's going to be safe right here. I am keeping this grown woman, Nadia, safe. I know that little Nadia, is right there, and I can go into that room with her, and I'll be able to carry her. Just like we talked about with kids, what should you say? I had to do that. I had to do that for myself.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was ready. I needed to be able to trust myself and feel that safety within myself enough.
Yeah. And I just want to mention EMDR is a therapy. You've mentioned it a couple times, just so folks know what it is. I've never had it, nor am I a therapist, but my understanding of it, I write about it. I've researched it, but basically you associate memories or photos of past traumas, and it switches to a safe mental state. And it's done by somebody who's obviously trained in such a way that you then lose the triggers and the desire to flip cars or drink alcohol or smoke crack or whatever self-medication one is into, and avoid those triggers. And in other words, trauma recovery is not about forgetting the trauma. It doesn't magically make the trauma go away. I mean, who can forget a rape? That's horrific. You're not going to forget it. But you can, the goal is to let the memory go through our minds and harmlessly, where we don't harm ourselves, we don't harm others, we're not triggered. That flash of emotions, the high blood pressure doesn't come back. In other words, the memory's there, but it's not going to be damaging and disabilitating. And EMDR is a great therapy. I hear about it over and over and over again, that it's very, very successful. And if you're going through a trauma or have, I suggest you look into it.
Yeah, I mean, EMDR was, I don't want to describe it as like a end all be all. I mean, it was certainly with somebody that I had built trust with, that had provided a safe place for me to go to. And Kimmy Hunkel led me to Miriam Paul, and Kimmy is very much a trauma specialist, and Miriam helps just overall with the mindfulness. And so EMDR for me, I didn't know where to start. But what it did for me was help me make sense of not just a flashback, but how my mind had been imprinted in relation to the rest of the world. It's like, okay, here's Nadia, and how am I relating to the rest of the world? And I understood it just like I did that doctor's office and or the closet that I went to. So at first I was so overwhelmed. I didn't know where to start with all the different experiences. She had me write a piece of paper. And this may be helpful for other people to do. All of our trauma is significant and real. Just because we went through all this stuff with me, that is irrelevant. Everybody's trauma is subjective to themselves. And so one of the things that helped me initially, you mentioned writing, was I separated, she had me write like in 5-year increments stuff. And she picked, okay, we're going to start with this. And that was where we started. I did not know how to begin. Some people do the light that's going back and forth. It was a little bit too much, so she held it. This is, again, with a therapist that I trusted, that knew me. And it helped to follow her guidance for words that I could not find to what had happened. She asked me to describe the room. I did. She asked me, she walked me through a lot, helped me put the names on feelings. It was several sessions, and I ended up creating a different ending and got, again, names onto feelings for something that was a non-identifiable marking in my head. Mm-hmm. It now had words, a picture, the disassociation goes away. And you just understand yourself a heck of a lot better and can use it to, become more aware today when certain triggers come up. And it really helped me a lot. The cool thing is that I continued to work with Miriam, continued to develop trainings in kundalini yoga. So the first was the level 1 training, then it was mind and meditation, then it was conscious communication, and the most recent one is authentic relationships. And what this is like books of Eastern teachings that helped me too. And I want to encourage others. It helped me to find a non-judgmental way of living. Whatever modality or mindfulness practice, whatever exercise, whether it's nature and surfing, whatever might be sparking you to just kind of connect, that's your core innocence calling you. For me, it happened to be Kundalini yoga. For others, it may be nature. For others, it may be art. For others, it may be, music. It may be the computer. I'm not sure, but there's some hobby, something that's calling in you, that's connecting you to like that core innocence, that original self that's able to just kind of be free in their element. And for me, it happened to be Kundalini yoga. And for others, if there's another calling, like, we talked about Wes and his music, and some people, it just depends, but don't ignore that calling. Don't ignore that hobby. And the more that I did with the yoga, the more I felt closer and closer to my truth and that home within.
Yeah. And just for the listeners, Wes, when you mention Wes, you're referring to Wes Geer, who's been a guest on our podcast. Wes is just another remarkable person, human being he's a rock star. I mean, let's face it. And Wes Geer was the guitarist. A whole bunch of recovery. Yeah, but he did Rock to Recovery and has helped innumerable people with his thing. And music's a big one. I know somebody who's really into surfing.
Yeah.
But pick something.
Yeah.
I like the way you phrase that. Kind of connect to the
it's our core innocence.
Yeah, our core innocence. That's a great term. I had never heard that before.
Yes.
In fact, I'm going to write that down while I'm thinking about it. Find that core innocence and go for it. It's be sad to get to the end of life and say, hey, I should have taken ballroom dancing and never have done it,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, this is all great stuff because you're recovering. Let's talk about, and the other thing, and I don't want to underplay this, you're now today a happy, healthy mom. That's huge because you're raising these little,
they're awesome.
These little human beings to be cool human beings, and you couldn't do that had you not done the work that you're doing.
Right. Yeah. I had them when I was, 44, and Bill and I, decided, separated, we're going to do this. And it just was so beautiful. I am blessed beyond my wildest dreams. But then again, I'm not surprised because life has been pretty interesting to have 3 sons that each have different color eyes. Each are very, very different. And what the blessing provides is really, really living the work. That's what I call it today. That's how I help people today, is I say, okay, this thing came up and this is how I'm walking through it. If it is me trying to mother the little girl in me, I say it in this third person way, but it really is connecting to that core innocence and understanding, okay, I'm going to choose love over fear and judgment. And I can walk through that a little bit more. Or it's in mothering moments where, we have these little phrases, but it really is, I am observing my child in this survival mode. I'm not going to use shaming words. You're being bad. I don't use that. Those words have no place in my house ever. I'll say what I have feelings charts with emojis all over the house. It's like, what is, put a name on it. We say, put a name on it, or flip it. Like I mentioned earlier, well, he hurt his brother. Okay. Well, why do you think he hurt him? What is going on? And then I'll say, flip it back. Okay. Well, he was hurt, and they'll figure it out now. But I believe that, the Creator has given me just a beautiful, beautiful gift in living the work within for my own inner child, and now being able to teach my children how to live a more mindful but happy, thriving kind of life, just connected more to their true self and innocence. What I say is a home within is a space that is free of what I call attack thoughts. That is a phrase that comes somewhat from A Course in Miracles, but you reference some of it. It's like the reptilian brain, the survivalist brain. And I call it attack. I call them attacks because, it's neurologically kind of the part that has helped the human race survive this long, but it attacks us by separating us from this core innocence and truth, our infinite true selves that never changes. Like, this is here. It's never changed. If we close our eyes and think of somebody that we love, that's their energy. That's their aura. It's not going to change whether you call them a bad word or not right here in this room, That's the truth. That's the only truth that matters. And then we have all these different neurological and science studies, and there's so many ways to understand the mind, so many different ways. But all I care about today are the ways that my mind attacks my connection to this only truth that matters. And having a home within is where I can say, okay, I'm going to breathe deeply right now. I'm going to remember this core innocence and truth. And today, I will choose love in all of my thoughts, all of them, all of what they say are defects, all in the surviving mode. And I'm not going to choose this fear and judgment. Most of the time, it's why shaming happens. Most of the time, it's why shame happens. And we get connected from our truth, and then we get disconnected from each other. It's what separates us. So it's the attacking part that I care about. If we're in this, there's no turning it all off, but if we're in this balanced kind of mode, it's like, we can feel safe within ourselves. Isn't that what we all want? It's calm, serenity, fun, some bliss, and some peace somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's right there within us.
Yeah. And another thing that's kind of come through with what you've shared, I call it, in my book, I call it rinse and repeat. You get to a spot. There's 15 chapters because at least my research shows essentially 15, 5 dive stages, 5 survive stages, and 5 thrive stages. And yet it's not linear. It's not like you just check the boxes and keep going up and up and up. You get someplace and then you just, one day you land on depression. It's just the way it is. But, the overall trend is good, but rinse and repeat means you get to a place that's really good. And then, like in your story, I mean, you're kind of the poster child of waves of trauma,
Oh, thank you.
well, I mean, you've been through a lot and a wave and a wave.
I get it. And I love the making light of it. Trust me.
Well, I'm not making light of it. What I'm doing is it's a compliment because you're going through it and you're going through it with a lot of class, a lot of dignity. And a lot of people would be just utterly defeated having been through just one of your traumas, let alone all these waves of trauma. So I meant it as a compliment. I hope you took it like
totally
that.
took it that way.
But I'm just saying, rinse and repeat, because, don't beat ourselves up. And sometimes we revisit some of the negative stuff, and that's totally normal, totally okay, totally normal. I get all these questions, particularly
normal.
In the homeless shelter and I also did stuff in the jail until COVID wiped that out. But you get people that say, when are you like all better? And it's like, I don't know that you're ever all better. Never know another wave. It's just more of a mindset. Hey, I'm going to I just took 3 steps back, but I'm going to take 5 steps forward. And the overall progress and not giving up and just realizing, and then people will say to me all the time, I'm depressed, as if they're doing something wrong. I'd be worried if you weren't depressed, at some point, with some of these journeys we've been through. Again, it's very healing to just realize, hey, shock, denial, anger, these are all normal emotions. They're totally okay. Just don't hurt somebody, don't hurt, yourself. But,
trauma healing is layered.
Yeah.
It is layered. And, my therapist has taught me how relationships or life, relationships are opportunities to heal. And any time we're triggered, we'll be triggered all the time. It's an opportunity to say, okay, like, what core wound is coming up? I'm going to go back and I'm going to dive. But anything that anybody does is either an act of love or a cry for love. Anything. And it really has nothing to do with us. So if we recognize, okay, they're in their fear and judgment, it's an act or a cry, and now I'm going to go, okay, like, what is coming up? And you said it beautifully. It's layered. It's not linear. That's a perfect word. And stuff comes up all the time. But today, I'm not going to choose the fear or the judgment of self, nor of somebody that may be in their own trauma that's coming up again. This is where being aware of the shame is so important, because when trauma keeps coming up and you're like, oh, darn, I should be over it. Why is this happening? Or, no, screw shame is what I say. It's like screw shame. And so if we're aware, our mind will create that, then, okay, I'm going to choose love. Okay. Wow, there's more healing, and come here and let me process more. Wow, I'm going to understand maybe a future situation better. Maybe, the past better. Maybe my child better. Maybe my partner better. It's not just it's not a defect, and it's not a bad thing. There's gifts in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
There's gifts.
So I know right now you're focused on your book, Home is Within You. Nadia Davis, go get it.
I want to be focused on the healing.
This book is all about that. It's about healing, and I know you're focused on this, but I know you got other projects going on too in this kind of thriving stage of your life. What do you want to share about these other things you're up to?
Most of the work I do today is helping others to learn to create a home within them. And I talked about that a lot. And a lot of it I do through live stuff on Instagram, but I also teach kundalini yoga. If anybody is interested.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
I teach you teach it too?
Of course I do.
Where do you teach it?
Yes, I teach it on the beach. I teach it on Sundays, Tower 14, but I also teach it online. And I do offer individual healing coaching. Tower
14 Seal Beach or?
Huntington Beach.
Oh,
no, there's going to be. But yes, I do offer. I adore 7 Chakra Yoga Center for Spiritual Sciences. And that is where I began teaching. They now have a whole center in Temecula. With COVID, they shut down. So all of my stuff shifted. to online. And yeah, I mean, check out my Instagram page.
Tell us the handle.
At Nadia Maria Davis.
Okay.
And I also do spiritual advocacy, which is kind of an interesting term. It's basically advocating for your true self, where I teach how I share how I'm living the work so others can relate in a vulnerable space to becoming aware of their attack thoughts. I literally will share like hardcore and vulnerability, how I observed my oldest son, or how I worked through an attack from another, or how I was attacking myself to do 3 things. One is the self-compassion. The other is compassion for others. And the third is more of a transformative justice. So when we are choosing love over fear and judgment, connected to our true selves, I believe all 3 of those things can happen. And so it's called Spiritual Advocacy Live. And
I know you're still a licensed attorney. You could practice law, but I guess at the moment you're not, or you tell me.
I don't have time right now, but the most recent stuff that I did was helping women that were being shamed. A couple of different cases, and for confidentiality, I don't want to share the specifics, but absolutely.
So I guess you step in when you see a case you want to get involved with.
Or someone will let me know that they need help. And that's what occurred, about 7 months ago. And I couldn't turn my back on this girl. And it was, most of it will be either restraining orders or defense of one that was wrongfully put in place for attempting to silence them. But any of the legal stuff now will focus on a nonprofit called Home is Within You that will partner with some of the efforts that relate to the book. One of them being, Tanya, the trying to prevent mothers and children or fathers and children from being separated. So that is a whole another podcast discussion.
Okay.
And then another is some of the generational trauma prevention and some of the frontliner. A lot of it is helping survivors and frontliners learn the somatic skills to feel safe in their body. I don't want to give too much away, but
no, that's fair.
It's building the message of Home is Within You, and basically workshops.
So the basic idea, what's the date of your release is coming up?
April.
So any day now.
April 25th.
Okay.
2 weeks.
Couple weeks. The book's going to be out. We recommend everybody gets Home is Within You by Nadia Davis. Your Instagram, check that out. Do you have a website as well?
Yes, actually go to the website. Everything is there. It's www.nadia-davis.com.
That's easy.
That's easy. Just go to NadiaDavis.com. There's a line between Nadia and Davis. And if you know anybody that needs help to have some connection with someone that is going through addiction, trauma struggles, there's a part of this book that anybody can relate to, and I would be more than happy to help them and to send a copy to somebody that can't afford it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. We just got a request from somebody whose brother was in prison, and we sent a copy, and we're like that. In fact, we do hardback, we do paperback, but a lot of prisons won't take the hardback; they won't allow them in. So we specifically printed the softback so we could donate them to the jails and prison systems.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah,
and we'll to have a good book.
San Quentin, ironically, even though it has San Quentin has California's death row, it also has some of the most advanced programs.
That's great.
Yeah, and I'm getting more in.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
And I'm trying to get them. I just make them available wherever I think I can help someone. I'm with you.
Trauma Research Foundation, they'll do a book club with your book, and you need.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's great if you.
No, it's a great conversation to be
words.
having, and it sounds like your career, if you want to call it, for lack of a better term, your cause is probably a better term, has kind of shifted from the legal going to court and have litigation to more. This is probably more powerful and helpful.
Advocacy.
Yeah, kind of a spiritual. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's super cool.
It's a combination, and it's been a beautiful, beautiful journey. And I think the most rewarding part, if everything went away, every chapter starts with "Dear Son."
Mm-hmm.
My oldest read it. He was the most important person to me to read it.
Mm-hmm.
Gave me a big hug. He, and teaching my children to remember the younger ones that home is within them, is the biggest blessing and all that I could ask for. The work that I do helping others is part of just sharing how I'm living the work. And I wouldn't change it for $1 million. Yes, I'm a lawyer. Yes, there's a nonprofit in creation. Yes, I can help people get protection tomorrow, today, in this moment as an attorney. Yes, I teach kundalini yoga and have 3-level certifications and the Japji. But ultimately, it's sharing how we're living the work, really, and sharing our stories and creating that safe space of vulnerability. So I can. It's awesome.
It really is awesome. And I think I predict you're going to end up helping innumerable people, because you have your dad's drive to step into society's messes and fight for just causes. I mean, I hate to sound
Someone's got to do it.
Larry H. Parker, but that's kind of, you've got that spirit.
Someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot out there. I do feel a whole shift in the world. I do.
I kind of feel like I tell my friends and family, look, I pray for world peace, but until then, there's a lot of work to do. There's just no end. So I'm going to leave the final word to you. First, but before I do, I want to just say thanks for coming on and be so gracious with lots of time. Thanks for sharing your stories, even the really tough to talk about parts. That's modeling for lots of people the process of how to really kind of move through this stuff. My open heart surgery when I was 11, that's small potatoes to what you went through, but it's not a competition. Trauma's trauma, and we got to deal with it. I never dealt with mine until now, and now I talk about it, and no big deal. I'm not triggered, like I used to be with that topic. But so I just want to say thank you again for writing the book. People don't know until they've written a book just how much effort that is, and this is a big, thick one. How many pages have we got here?
Oh my goodness.
Over 400 pages. That's out. That's a lot of work. So thanks for coming on. I'm going to leave the final, whatever you want to share to you. What have we not covered that we want to make sure gets talked about?
A lot of people do not realize that asking for help is the most courageous thing that they can do. If you cannot find a person or a place right here and right now in any given moment, there is a safe place inside you. And if we take a deep breath, there is a home within that holds all the truth that matters. And that is that your true innocent self is whole, divine, and complete. Remember that when you need to. Sending hugs to anybody that's struggling. You can recover. That's it.
That's beautiful. The book, Home is Within You, Nadia Davis, thank you again for coming on to Post-Traumatic Thriving.
Thank you for what you do.
Thanks for supporting our podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on your favorite social media. For books, merchandise, or to donate, visit CoreIQ.com. Post-Traumatic Thriving is produced by CoreIQ, a nonprofit with a mission to teach the skills we all need but are not taught in school. CoreIQ and the Post-Traumatic Thriving podcast are for informational purposes only and do not provide medical or mental health advice. Always consult with your licensed medical and mental health care providers.